Hello.
Welcome back to the Bible Study Girl podcast. This is Sarita. You may know me as Bible Study Girl, and with our fabulous introduction is none other than the executive producer of this podcast, Bible Study Brother.
What's up, people? It's Bible Study Brother, also known as Icarus Gray, over at Gray Area Anime. And this music is a little loud, but it's the most wonderful podcast of your day. Go get you some energy. Listen to Icarus Gray's new single. Get you some positivity in your life.
Yeah, I was looking at your face and trying to figure out if you were gonna plug or what, and I that's why I didn't say anything. So that was a good pause for me. I did a great job being expectant and a good observer of what's going on. So guys, you are tuning in to another episode of our blog recaps. We have been going back through the Bible Study Girl archives and talking about the blogs in more detail. And today's blog is really special. You guys are going to love the title. This is not a clever hook 'em in. This is not a secret announcement, but the title of the blog that we're talking about today is I'm Expecting. Are you making some kind of noise? Because you're not trying to hear it.
What?
Oh, okay. Oh. I thought you were like doing a sound effect or something.
I was. They were cheering. You couldn't hear the cheering?
No.
Oh, wow. They were cheering for you.
Okay. Because I thought I saw you push a button and I'm like, pause for a sound effect. Anyway, so if you are wondering, how can I read the blog I'm expecting, head over to BibleStudyGirl.com. You can type on the magnifying glass in the upper right-hand corner, type in I'm expecting. It will take you directly to the blog that we are talking about. Otherwise, you have to go through my pages and pages of content, and you're free to do that. Please do explore. But this will get you right to the topic that we're discussing today. I was thrilled when I saw what was up on the docket today, and Bible Study Brother was as well. The way we handle these blog recaps is Bible Study Brother tells me what he got out of the blog, and I tell you guys what I felt at the time that I wrote it, and then I transition into what does it mean to me now. So I think that's been very helpful for me. I think it's been helpful for Bible Study Brother, and prayerfully it's been helpful for you guys as well. So we're going to go ahead and dive into this blog recap. Bible Study Brother, what did you get out of I'm Expecting?
Well,
other
guys,
than my ugly wake-up picture. Go ahead.
Well, guys, the time has finally come. I have been, my name has been used negatively. So much, that there's actual proof in the years that I've been reading these blog posts, way more than I'm giving credit, in this blog post. That I wasn't expecting that, but here it is.
I know you weren't. I knew that's why you were excited. Oh, and I mentioned the fact that you were reading. But we will see as time goes on that there are many blogs that he did not read, which is understandable. There's lots of content. I get it. It doesn't have to be your thing, but I do pick and poke at you, and this is your moment of triumph, eh?
My goodness. But also, it's also a moment of like, because I did definitely read this one, because I remember thinking about it. And what's funny about it to me is two things. Spiritually, I think about that all the time because I ended up doing a sermon about this later, or prior. No, later. It would have been later because I obviously hadn't accepted. I did a whole sermon about this, about basically it was a what to expect when you're expecting, and the fact that we all carry purpose and things of that nature, and things that only we can do that are with us or whatever. And it's so enlightening to see that, but it's also enlightening to see in another visual form. Not only did you give me credit for reading, it's your way of saying I kind of listened. And like two horn toots in one blog.
In one blog. That should carry you for months, bro.
Oh, listen. and the next episode, horn and two. Um, but the other part of it that I think I realized I was wrong now. I mean, granted, there were parts of you at the time when I was reading, I was like, you're not really tapping in.
Right.
But spiritually, you was in tune. Because going through it, like, and now as we go back and being like, oh, that's a word we needed, you did do what you needed to do. In hindsight,
Right.
it's easier to see that now. Whereas, and this is the first one where I'm also in a hindsight mode, obviously, but that was the most clarifying thing. Is like I was being honest in the fact that I'm like, I mean, you are like I know you're writing and know how you were doing whatever. So it's even further impressive to see how God was still orchestrating your words. Like, even
Right.
though you were doing exactly what I said you were doing, but it's still better to kind of to see that happen with you now. So yeah, that was my thing.
Okay, guys, if you're a little lost and confused, I can tell you now what I meant when I wrote the blog, what I was thinking, what was going through my mind, the things that I was battling with. I talked in that blog about the fact that I'm expecting, and I was really expecting. I was unsure. I was unsure what God was going to do with me. I felt like I was in a waiting season, a look and see season, and really in a labor season. Because being open and transparent on the blog was a laboring. It was not something that was easy. And just like childbirth is not easy, like being patient and waiting on God and working through those pains through my writing. That's exactly what I was feeling at the time that I wrote the blog. And the crazy thing for me, or the thing that I think bothered me the most, is that I didn't know how long this blog writing season would last. How long are you going to have me writing a blog every day? How long are you going to have me being submissive and really waiting for you to tell me what you want me to share with people? And the truth of the matter is, I think that's something that's not ever going to end for any believer. We're always going to have to be submissive, and we're always going to have to be waiting on God to tell us what we need to do. Um, but while we wait, we also have to work, which is kind of the paradox of being a Christian. We're not supposed to just sit idle. We're supposed to constantly be in work. And so when I wrote the blog, that was my thing. That was my issue. That was my concern. Like, am I being transparent enough? Yes, I'm being obedient to you, but am I sharing enough? Because you also don't want to err on the side of sharing too much. And I can tell you, like at that time, I was thinking, I don't like it when people get up and say, they share their testimony and it's so vague, mm-hmm. and you don't know what they're talking about. And sometimes you feel like if you would just go and say call a thing and say what it is, so I know, so I'm not over here trying to guess and trying to figure it out. And so I had that in my mind, trying to balance that with being too descriptive and putting too much information out there. Because part of my testimony, it doesn't just affect me. I'm in relationship with people. I'm interacting with people. So there are some stories I don't have the liberty to like fully tell, because it's not just my story. And it's not just my testimony, and it's not just my take on things. And I was definitely at that point, and still continue to be mindful of other people and their stories and their testimonies, and they have the right to tell them the way they want to tell them. And the only testimony that I can give is mine. So that was what I was thinking at the time that I wrote it. Right. You had a thought or a comment, because I could see the light bulb flick in your head. What were you going to say?
I also realized that this was, just by timing wise, this was probably when guys started talking to me about you doing a podcast. Because I remember us having the conversation, and I was like trying to give you ways that I felt would be easier for you to do, to express yourself, if I remember correctly. Because it's like one of those things that kind of like, I think you like asked me about it, and I was like, well, I feel like you're trying to do, this or whatever advice I gave. And then eventually, I think God, that's when he started to sprinkle in. So if you want an actual track on when God started moving, you can use this blog post.
Yeah, it's a great pen in history, and the date that it was published is written and everything. So that's great to know. That's probably when the beginnings, the makings. See, I was in labor, expecting what is God gonna do, and not knowing. And in that waiting period, I can say, fast forward to now. Are there times when I could have been more transparent, even when the story is just about me and nobody else is really going to be involved? Absolutely. But I believe that I have taken the appropriate measures and the appropriate precautions. I don't believe that I've been overly vague. When I'm able to share, I definitely do share. I don't think everybody needs all the details. And let me tell you this, even with me being transparent, this is breaking news for Bible study, brother. I can't wait for his reaction. Even with me being transparent, I still feel, I know for a fact, people think that's not enough. I'm still mysterious in some categories because I had an incident happen to me last night that we can talk about personally in depth and detail off of this podcast, but I wanted to break the news to you here so you could be like, what? Anyway, people have been talking about me and like sharing information about me. What I think what people don't realize is that I really am a private person in a lot of ways. And so when information gets back to me, I can trace who told that information or where you got that information from, because I know what levels of information I provide to other people. I was shocked and amazed. I was like, why? Okay. Because this information had to travel through several people for it to get back to me. It was only Jesus and the Holy Ghost. At the time I got the information, I was like, oh, okay, cool. That's what's up. None of the information was a lie. It was all true. But I'm like, I wouldn't say that I know I didn't say it to the person that gave it back to me, because they tried to convince me you did. And I just let it go. But I knew it to be a lie. And when I traced it back, I'm like, wow, that information had to flow through so many people to get back to you. So with that information, I feel like I provide an appropriate level of transparency. What they said wasn't anything bad, or anything like dangerous, but it was just like, wow, people really talk about other people's business like that. Like it's something that would not be important to me. But you got the wrong one, baby. Like, and it let me know, okay, that is somebody you can't talk to, period. And I have lots of guards up in my life. I have friends. I have lots of friends. I have lots of associates that probably feel like they are true friends and that they're in there.
We're back to the knowing Sarita.
We're back to really knowing me. The fact that, because the thing is, this information wasn't something top secret. You know what I'm saying? But because the fact that it's not top secret, why did you even feel the need, the person that started it and sent it, why did you even feel the need to share that? Like, it just was weird and crazy to me. So the person I am today, I feel I provide the appropriate level of transparency in the blog, the appropriate level of transparency in the podcast. And it also goes back to the friend thing that we talked about. When we talked to my bestie, like, it's important to have friends that genuinely care about you, and that you can share information with. So I'm thankful that I have that connection, but I also continue to be cautious about what I say on the podcast and what I put in the blog, because it is me. This is my life, my personal life. It's the only one I get. And just that little small incident showed me, girl, people will talk.
Oh yeah, people would talk, and I don't know if that's something like with us in general, just because of how grandma raised us in terms of what to expect. But just to bring that all around here, see what I did there.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm the same way, and I be like, I know where you got this from, and I know, but mine is more of a because I'm cool with everybody. I end up knowing what somebody said about me through somebody else, and then I'm like, see, this is why I don't fool with you,
Well,
or
my
whatever.
my
My stuff
thing.
be normally bad. Like I hardly it don't never be no through the grapevines. It's never something that these people would say these things to my face.
Well, let me tell you something. The thing that was so crazy about it was that it was a conversation that Tamika and I were having, and the
Mm-hmm.
other person was privy to the conversation. I wasn't whispering or anything. You know what I'm saying? It was
Mm-hmm.
nothing secret, but it's just the fact that you felt you had to share that with. When I tell you the story and like how many people it had to flow through to come back to
Yeah.
me, like you're gonna be like, okay, that's weird and that's
But
wild.
I also told you that people watch you because you are an enigma. You are the most unique person that exists for them. Because you're efficient, you draw people in, people always want to talk, but they also want to get in and they feel like they're close and should know or do know more about you than what they actually know about you.
And
Um
that's the thing. The only reason I mentioned it around the person because I didn't feel like it was something wasn't a big deal. You know what I'm saying? Like, but you
but
took that
that's a personal feeling
right.
perception of the situation, whereas they may have embarrassing issues with whatever the situation is. They might have that kind of issue in terms of how they feel about it personally.
When I tell you, you're gonna be like, okay, that's weird. But
I'm probably gonna be listen, y'all.
it was reinforcing to me. You do have to be mindful of creating, and I'm gonna tell you something. The reason why it's relevant to this podcast is because it has to do with church and how the church functions.
Yeah.
If I was not, if I didn't have a close relationship with the Lord and I didn't know him for myself, it's the kind of thing that will push somebody away, you know, from having interactions with people in church and being in close fellowship with people in church, which we know, you know, people in church are not perfect. But if I say something in front of you, I trust that you don't take that information and carry it somewhere else, you know?
Right. I've been thinking about that with terms of the title and what people expect from the church. Currently, what people expect from the church in this world is like the church in and of itself is the cause for the or the attempted overturning of Roe versus Wade. The church is the cause for all of these different things that are going on, and that's what not what we as a whole have caused to be our expectation, but it's what has been allowed to be the expectation because of things like what you're saying. So
Right.
often there are these moments where we are giving bad witness or being bad characters, and you don't realize that that's how somebody will forever, for the most part, view the church because of that one interaction.
Right.
Because the thing with the church that I understand, and I think we talked about this in the last episode, but if we didn't, I'll remind you guys, we were going through First Timothy at the church we attend right now. And basically what was explained is that we all go through afflictions. You need to expect to go through the things that Jesus went through, not to the level of crucifixion, but to the level of like you're going to be attached to all kind, attacked and attached to all kinds of
Right.
different things. And I sat there for a second and I was like, I got frustrated for a second because in my mind, I keep thinking of all of these different connecting points of how people are able to differentiate between, well, these people as a whole or that action as a whole doesn't. And the part that I hate the most about how people use religion as their scapegoat is that's not what you should expect if you read the Bible. If you try to read the Bible, absent of you trying to call it mythical or whatever the case may be, like for all of the quote unquote crazy miraculous things, when you get down to it, treating people nice and being good to people and not doing bad things is, you know, the source and the soul of the truth. But we put all of that in people, whereas nobody's actions are
That's
perfect.
true.
Nobody's actions are
Nobody is
perfect.
perfect.
And
Right.
that ends up being what you expect. Like a person is not, or even a group, because there are bad groups, there are bad churches, there are bad representations of who God is in people who claim to be Christians, and that is still not what we are supposed to do.
But I will say this too, even in people that are Christians, like myself, like you said, we're going to mess up.
Mm-hmm.
We're not going to be perfect. We're going to hurt other people and not intentionally, you know. But I think that's why it's important to form. It doesn't, and I hate to say this, but it doesn't even have to be like forming relationships with members in your local church body. I think that's important. But I think to me, the thing that is most important is that you have relationship and fellowship with Christians. Not saying that you shouldn't fellowship with your church family. You should definitely, absolutely. Please fellowship with your church family. Please form those bonds and relationships if you can. You know, I think about how we grew up
Mm-hmm.
and the people that we went to church with are people we still care about today and we still do life with them today. My but I had to learn and grow to a point where I really understood that Christians in general are just not going to be perfect.
Mm-hmm.
But I know I've talked about it on this podcast before. Sometimes church hurt is like the worst hurt. You know what I'm
Oh,
saying? It is it is because you want to believe and hope in people and in your church family and hope that, you know, um you can continue to be on the same page with them and that y'all can fight these fights together because the world is already cruel enough and being a Christian is already hard enough. And I need you. I need your support to survive. And so I think that's why church hurt is the worst for me.
mm-hmm.
I and so when I pull forward the blog about expecting, I suppose I should be expecting all of these things to happen. I'm not new to this. I'm true to this. I know it's going to happen, but it still catches me by surprise and catches me off guard and throws me off a little bit and causes me to question things. But reading the blog today for me was an encouragement that there's better on the other side. God has more for you. You just have to go through this period of labor and this waiting period um, to get to the good stuff, to get to the good part that He has for you. So I probably took us down a little bit of a rabbit hole, but
No, I think you led us to a perfect application part
right,
of this in terms of what we're saying, because there are so many things that you expect. You expect that God is moving, and you expect that there is a purpose for each and everything that you do, but you also have to think about what people expect, and
right,
not in a way of like making it change what God is expecting of you, but when you know your adversaries, when you know the enemy, when you know the distraction, you can step over it. You know, it's not going to be something that causes you to fall or stumble. And so often today, like I was saying, there's no nuance to understanding. Like for the I'm not going to use this example, but for the longest time, they expected a certain people to come with a certain type of criminal activity.
right,
But that's not how things are. That's not even how the people are. You and I were expected to be living in the suburbs when people would interact with us. And then when they would see where we lived, it would be like, well, why do you not sound like this, act like this, do this?
Right.
And the expectations can be misleading, and you have to stay true to who you actually are, because even what you're expected to do and you know that's what you're supposed to do can be perceived differently. So just know that on all sides, especially in this Christian walk, it's gonna be hard, because they at our necks for everything, you know.
Yeah, and not even just the proverbial day, but we've talked about this. Christian walk is not easy, but we've been equipped. We can handle all things through Christ who strengthens us. And that's easy to say, harder to do. And I'm a living example of it is harder to do and to walk out what he calls us to do. But the reward is greater when I walk out what God has for me versus what I have for myself. Because I come up with plans for myself and they are like trash. And then the Lord has to come through and be like, girl, get yourself on over here and sit down and do what I told you to in the first place. So I'm committed to doing what he asked me to do. The thing about life is we're going to experience labor pains, whether we walk with Christ or not. And I would rather be walking with Christ while I'm in that pain, because I know there's going to be a great payoff and a great reward for me.
While we're in this mode, I also hope that this blog post can just sprinkle out into the atmosphere in a real world sense.
You want somebody to get a baby?
A lot of people. I mean, well, technically 2 people specifically.
Okay.
But, you know, just
he's able.
Matter of fact,
he can do it.
I'm gonna sprinkle the blog post your way a little bit.
And let me just say this. If I am expecting, I definitely won't be making an announcement on the podcast. I might write a blog about it, though, when my baby is here, because folks be talking anyway. Okay.
Well, I hope that
you ain't gonna be talking down on my baby. Go ahead.
I hope that you guys are now expecting to get a blog post every day over at BibleStudyGirl.com. Hit us up on Instagram at _BibleStudyGirl, on Twitter at BibleStudyGirl 2. You can follow our Facebook page at Bible Study Girl, but Facebook, sadly enough, the podcast experiment is already over with them, and they were like, we're out. So check us out on, basically, we're still everywhere. Anywhere that you can find a podcast, you will find us. So listen to us and just enjoy and know that we're working towards something. And it's not, the birthing pains that preach. It's not the eyeglass cleaner that preaches. It's not all of these random items that I'm looking at that preach, but we preach.
And until we meet again, guys, keep preaching.